Sawadi, hello everyone. So welcome again to our continuation of the discussion about adjusting entries. So for today, we are about to discuss in this video lecture the prepaid expenses. So again, this is your instructor, Noel Bergonia. So just sit back, relax, take down notes. And if you do have questions, just please let me know on our respective chat boxes, or even you can comment on this video lecture. Okay, so I hope that you're doing great. So let's start our discussion. So again, previously, we have introduced adjusting entries. We have already discussed the accruals. We have also discussed the uncollectible accounts and the depreciation. So for this particular video lecture, we will be starting the deferrals naman po, okay, which is prepaid expenses. So let's define what prepaid expenses are. So you might have heard this already in the lists of the assets in our module 1's discussion, but this is also referring to as deferred expenses or deferred charges. So when we say prepaid expenses, these are not actually expenses yet, but they are just payment in advance, okay, of expenses. But take note, they are paid in advance, but we haven't used them yet, okay? So examples of these prepaid expenses or advance payment that are not yet used are, let's say, you bought supplies, that you will be using in the future, or even you might have advance paid any rents, So meron tayong mga pa-advance rentals, or even we have paid the insurance coverage in advance, and also property taxes, and of course other kumbaga advance payment schemes pa that we have made within a particular period. Actually, aware ba kayo na yung depreciation discussion natin in the previous video lecture was also similar with the concept of prepaid expenses, na we have paid the property, plant, and equipment in advance, and then as time goes by, we are using it. Okay? Pero ito, mas specific tayo na all about the general approach for prepaid expenses. So this prepaid expense is considered as a mixed account. Hi, mixed account? Anong mixed account? So when we talk about mixed accounts, so this refers to accounts which has a combined feature of a real account. So meaning it is an asset, actually, di ba? Prepaid expense are asset as mentioned in module 1. And then as time goes by, once we used it, it will become a nominal account. Okay, so magiging expense siya. So again, being a mixed account, it has a characteristic of being an expense for the portion being used during the period. And then also, it has a characteristic of being an asset for those that are not yet used. And magiging expense lang siya until it was being used or expired in the future. So ayan, so this is our first example of a mixed account, prepaid expense. Again, mixture po siya ng pagiging asset, okay, for those that are not yet used, and then it will become an expense after it was already being used. Okay, so because of this, that our prepaid expense is a mixture of two accounts. Okay, so you might have remembered, it seemed to be confusing dati nung module number 2. Bakit po pag bumili kami ng supply, yung isang example mo, sir, charge natin siya as supplies, which is an asset. And then the other one, we are charging it as supplies expense. So bakit kaya? So dito natin masasagot yon under the prepaid expense discussion. So as mentioned as well, this is a mixed account. And because of that, we have two methods or two approaches on how do we account for prepaid expenses. So either we will be using it using asset method or expense method. Okay, so mamaya we will be discussing thoroughly these two methods, but let me just introduce to you the asset method. So an asset method is a method when your prepaid expense was initially recorded as an asset. Okay, so pag bumili tayo or nagbayad tayo in advance, hindi pa natin nagagamit, nag-record tayo upon payment at ni-record natin siya initially at an asset, then we are already using the asset method. Okay, so ito nga po, the asset account is debited at the date of purchase or at the date of payment. On the other hand, when we talk about expense method naman, the expense method can be identified when we used, okay, kapag nagbayad po tayo initially ng prepaid expense, it was initially recorded on on an expense account. Okay, see the difference? Pag asset method, naka-debit pag ikaw ay nagbayad, asset account. Samantalang pag expense method, you are debiting an expense account. So that's explaining us why in modules 2 and 3, in our discussion of analyzing and journalizing, now we have options either to use, to debit it as an asset or debit it as an expense. Okay, because of these two methods that can be used, okay, for prepaid expenses. Again, please take note, Plaza, either of the two lang will be used. Hindi pwedeng sabay. Okay? We need the consistent from period to period. Okay, so here's the tabular analysis and comparison again of asset method and expense method. So kung patutungkulan natin at the time na nagbayad po tayo, okay, kasi di ba we are paying in advance, we are on the perspective of the company who is paying in advance, ha. Sabihin mo sa sarili mo, nagbabayad tayo. Okay? Yun yung perspective natin dito sa prepaid expense. We are the one who is paying it in advance. So pag nagbayad tayo, our initial entry, if it is asset method, we will be debiting an asset account. And then, if you are going to use naman expense method, you will be debiting an expense account. Paulit-ulit ko tong sinasabi, class, because this is one of the identifiers natin, okay, in using either asset method or expense method. Dahil magkaiba silang method, class, okay, pero either of the two can be used, magkaiba rin kasi yung approach natin sa adjusting entry. No? Kaya dapat properly identified kung anong method yung gamit. Kaya ngayon, I put emphasis on the way how we can identify the asset or expense method. So ayan, no, wag kayong magsasawa na makinig or marinig ito ng paulit-ulit. Okay? And then, with regards to adjusting entry, which is actually our focus with this particular video lecture, no? Mamaya, if we will be using the asset method, ang kanyang adjusting entry will be, di ba, nilagay natin sa asset lahat. So pag nilagay kasi natin sa asset lahat, ang assumption ay hindi pa siya nagagamit, di ba? So at the time that we have identified kung magkano na po yung na-used, we will be transferring it already to expense. Kasi di ba, in accrual basis, once you have used it, it should be an expense already. So ganun sa asset method. Ilalagay mo muna siya sa asset, pag nagamit mo na, magiging expense siya. On the other hand, if this is expense method, nilagay natin siya una lahat as expense. Of course, ang question natin, nagamit bang lahat para ilagay sa expense? Okay? If the answer is no, hindi naman nagamit lahat, then ang magiging adjusting entry naman po for the expense method will be the unused amount, which will be transferred naman to an asset account. So see the difference between the two. Pag asset method, nagta-transfer tayo from asset account going to an expense account because we have used it. Sa expense method, we are initially recording it as expense, pinapalabas natin na nagastos natin lahat, pero at the end of the reporting period, hindi pa po natin siya nagagamit lahat, kaya we need to transfer yung hindi nagamit na portion to an asset account. Okay? So I hope that that is clear, ha? Again, if you do have questions, please let me know. So to expound this further and to give you idea nung makikita ninyong entries. Okay, so ito po yung pro forma entries with regards to asset method and expense methods. Okay, so meron dalawang series of transactions, no? So to record the initial payment of expense, take note, class, hindi ito pang adjusting entry. Itong number 1. You have already done it in your module number 3, no? Nasa module number 3 na yan, no? Nagbayad tayo in advance, okay, in-entryhan na natin. Pero hindi natin alam na ay pang asset method pala yun, ay pang expense method pala yun. Okay, so ito po yung entry, no? If again, asset method was being used, okay, ang sabi natin kanina, pag nagbayad tayo, china-charge natin siya as prepaid account or an asset account. Oy, nasa quiz niyo to last time, ha? Prepaid expense account is an asset account. Okay, do not forget that, no? So, papalitan lang natin ng title yan kung ano yung mas fit doon sa transaction. It could be prepaid rent, prepaid insurance, supplies, and the likes. Okay, so again, pag asset method, dinebit natin at the time of payment yung asset account. While if it is an expense account, we have debited an expense account. Okay? Again, hindi ito adjusting entry kasi una sa lahat, may credit to cash. and adjusting entry here in our discussions are not pertaining to any cash account. Okay? Ngayon, dadako na tayo sa adjustments. Okay. So we need to adjust at the end of the accounting period. So asset method po muna tayo, no? So in the asset method, nabanggit kanina, nilagay natin siya as asset. So ang tanong, nagamit na ba siyang lahat? Okay? Or hindi pa? So ang i-account natin dahil nilagay niya siya as asset is yung tinatawag natin na used portion. Okay? Or pwede ring expired portion. Okay? So the used portion or expired portion will be adjusted. So pag used, anong ibig sabihin? Merong expense. Okay? So kaya ang adjusting entry natin is to record the expense for the used portion. And then, of course, dahil may nagamit na tayo, kailangan nyo na pong bawasan yung prepaid expense account or the asset account. That's why we are crediting that prepaid expense account. Okay? So I hope that that is clear. So yan po yung ating adjusting entry if we have the asset method. On the other hand naman, sa expense method, okay, so nilagay natin siya lahat as expense. Ang tanong natin kanina, gamit na ba lahat para ilagay as expense? Ang sagot mo, hindi. So kung hindi pa, you need to adjust on what we so-called unused portion. Okay, so syempre may portion pa yan na pwedeng baka in the future pa natin gamitin. Okay, so that's why we need to adjust. No? Hindi siya dapat lahat expense. Kasi pag pinalabas mo expense yan, nagamit na siyang lahat. Okay? So for the adjusting entry under expense method naman, okay, we will establish yung unused portion by debiting the asset account. Remember, the prepaid expense account is referring to the unused portion, kaya we are debiting it. And since malamang sumobra itong expense account natin, no? Since we have unused portion, kailangan natin siyang bawasan, kaya we credit an expense account. So I hope that you are appreciating the patterns, no? If this is asset method from an asset, nagamit natin siya, kaya we debit expense, binawasan yung asset. Samantalang sa expense method, nilagay mo siya lahat as expense, pero dahil hindi naman lahat nagamit, may unused portion, so you establish the asset for the unused portion at bawasan mo yung expense na inirecord mo. Okay? So either of the two methods, no? So we'll have the same result lang din. Magkaiba man sila ng adjusting entry, pero yung mga balances ay parehas. Mamaya makikita niyo yan sa ating mga examples, no? Parehas lang sila ng output. Kaya either of the two will be used. Okay, will give us the same output, magkaiba lang ng adjusting entry. And also, nakadepende rin ha sa problem kung paano siya in-state, kung alin sa dalawa yung gagamitin. Kasi importante nga po na ma-identify natin siya properly. Okay? So I hope that that is clear. Again, if you do have questions, no, please let me know. Huwag kayong malito, no, basta intindihin niyo yung per step-by-step process na binabanggit ko dito. Okay. So to finish the theoretical discussion before tayo magbigay ng various examples, so ito lang po, no? I just want to put an emphasis that regardless of which method you're going to use, whether you're going to use asset method or expense method, the accountant, ikaw, no, future accountant, you will employ in this case, okay, so the reported expense in the income statement. Okay, so yung after natin mag-adjust, yung expense na i-report natin sa income statement, at the same time, the amount of asset in the balance sheet na i-report natin, kasi again, the prepaid expense account is a mixed account, diba, of expense and asset. Okay, yung mga balances natin, whether asset method or expense method ang gagamitin, will be the same. Okay, yan yung binabanggit ko kanina, no? Magkaiba man yung ating ginamit na method, okay, it will give us the same result as to the balances. Okay? Then also, to avoid confusion and waste of time, no, you must consistently follow the method adopted for particular type of prepaid expense from period to period. So dapat maging consistent tayo, class. So if you have started it with using asset method for that particular prepaid expense, dapat in the susunod na mga taon, asset method ka. If you use expense method, then consistent ka rin na expense method. Okay? So you must be consistent. Okay? Eh sir, paano yan kung hindi sinabi yung method? Okay, so mamaya sa pang-concluding statement ko dito sa discussion na to, if in case hindi po binanggit kung anong method ang gagamitin, napaka-general lang nung statement natin, kay na nag-paid in advance tayo, wala kayong mahanap whether ito ba ay asset or expense method, okay, I will be stating to you later, no, yung pinakagagamitin natin if such the case. Okay? So again, if you do have questions, please let me know. All right, so to give you some examples, okay, so let's discuss, okay, some examples in the succeeding slides. Okay, so let's start with example number 1. So here is the main transaction, no? So on April 1, 2021, Junko Company paid an insurance premium of 60,000 covering 2 years beginning on this date. So ito, no, malalaman mo siyang prepaid expense kasi nagbayad tayo, we are Junko Company, okay, good for 2 years na insurance premium. Okay? And the company year ends on December 31. So for this example, no, we will show for both asset method and expense method. Okay? So on April 1, 2021, at the time na nagbayad in advance si Jungkook, okay, if we will be using asset method, ang entry natin, remember, if it is asset method, we debit the asset account. So we will be debiting the prepaid insurance account, 60,000. Again, that's an asset account. We have paid it in advance. So credit cash, 60,000. So yan din yung typical na ginawa natin in module number 3, di ba? We debit prepaid insurance, credit cash. Tapos do not forget, may explanation pa yan ha. Hindi ko lang nilagyan dito, to pay insurance in advance. Okay? While if you use expense method, i-charge natin siyang lahat as insurance expense. So we debit insurance expense, 60,000, and credit cash, 60,000. Okay, so that's our initial entry. These are not yet the adjusting entries. Okay, so kailan tayo mag-a-adjust? Of course, it would be at year-end, December 31. Kasi more likely, we are reporting every December 31. So on December 31, 2021, that's already the time when we need to adjust. So naalala nyo ba yung adjustments na kailangan natin for asset method at saka expense method? Okay, very good. So sa asset method, nilagay natin siya as asset on April 1. Pero syempre, tumakbo na yung oras, di ba? Nagsimula kasi yung coverage ng premium nung April 1 until December 31. So ilang buwan na po yun natapos. So we will adjust for what we so-called expired portion. So actually, this is the same with the used portion ha. Expired lang yung ginamit natin sa insurance premium kasi pag sinabi mong use sa insurance, ibig sabihin either namatay na yung in-insure mo o kaya naman baka nasunugan ka na kung fire insurance yon. Okay, so expired portion pag insurance tayo. So expired portion, okay, so pag expired portion, it means it will become an expense. So ilang buwan po yung coverage ng expense? So ito po yan. We have 60,000 as the total payment. Okay? From April up to December 31, pag binilang mo po yon, try mong bilangin, mag-pause ka, tapos bilangin mo April to December, that is good for 9 months. Okay? So 9 months na yung nakalipas or nag-expired. Tapos class, no? Dahil 2 years po yung coverage, I have just converted the 2 years into 24 months. Okay? Kasi 9 months yung ating numerator, so it's appropriate na maging denominator natin is in months as well. So malalaman natin na yung nag-expired na portion pala was 22,500. Okay? So are we clear on that? All right? So 60,000 times 9 divided by 24. Okay, so that would be 22,500. So ang entry po natin was debit insurance expense. Dahil nag-expired na ha, may expense dapat tayo, 22,500. And credit prepaid insurance, 22,500. Sir, why is it we're crediting prepaid insurance? It's because nilagay natin siya lahat as asset pero may nag-expired na portion, so bawasan mo na yung asset. Okay? So I hope that that is clear, ha? That's our adjusting entry if we have used asset method in this case. Also, I just want to put as well an emphasis on the balances. Sabi natin kanina in the previous slide, no, parehas lang yung magiging balance ng expense at saka asset method kahit alin sa dalawa ang gamitin natin. So I want to prove that. So right now, I am showing you on the screen yung balance ng prepaid insurance after nating mag-adjust. So initially, may 60,000 tayo nung nagbayad tayo. Tapos, nung nag-adjusting tayo for the expired portion, nag-credit tayo ng 22,500. So, kung debit yung prepaid insurance normal balance minus yung credit, no, that would be amounting to a remaining balance na 37,500. So yan po yung natitirang balance ng ating prepaid insurance that will cover the remaining months in the succeeding years. Okay? So mamaya we will prove that we will have the same prepaid insurance in the expense method. Okay? While your insurance expense, pag tinignan mo yung series of entries natin, isa lang yung insurance expense at yun ay yung 22,500. So our insurance expense was 22,500. Okay? So later, we will again prove if same lang ba sa expense method yung ating insurance expense to be reported in the income statement. Okay? So that's for the asset method. Again, if you do have questions, please let me know. Okay. So next, no, dun tayo sa expense method naman. So initially, we have put everything under expense. Pero nagamit na ba natin? Hindi pa. Or nag-expired na ba lahat? Hindi pa. Diba? Kasi we have actually only 9 months lang yung nag-expired. So para i-record natin yung unexpired portion naman, okay, so we compute. So 60,000 yung total na binayaran natin. Ilang buwan pa yung hindi nag-expired. So kung 24 months yun, tapos from April to December nag-expire na, so minus 9. So we still have remaining 15 months, no, na hindi pa nag-expire. So we proportionate it, so we multiplied 15 months over the total 24 months. So yung amount po ng hindi pa natatapos or hindi pa nag-expire was 37,500. Okay? So to establish our unexpired portion, it would be debiting yung asset kasi hindi pa nagagamit yan. Debit prepaid insurance, 37,500 and credit insurance expense, 37,500. Okay, bakit ulit dinebit yung prepaid insurance dito? Dahil may unexpired portion tayo. At bakit po credit yung insurance expense? Dahil sobra po yung ating ni-record na insurance expense in the initial entry. Okay? So I hope that that is clear. As you can see, no, magkaiba yung naging adjusting entry when we use asset method at saka expense method. Kaya again, importante kung anong method yung gagamitin ng company and at the same time, you should be consistent from period to period. But wait, no, let's prove kung equal nga ba yung balance ng prepaid insurance with the insurance expense to be reported in our financial statement. So sa expense method, kung makikita po ninyo, iisa lang naman yung ating prepaid insurance account. That is 37,500. So the balance under expense method ng prepaid insurance account natin was 37,500. Equal ba siya with the asset method balance? The answer is yes. So as we prove it, no, equal yung ating prepaid insurance whether we use asset method or expense method after adjusting. Okay, how about insurance expense? So for the expense method, we have initially 60,000 na nilagay as insurance expense. Pero nung nag-adjusting tayo, credit natin yung insurance expense. So pabawas yun, di ba? So 60,000 minus 37,500, we have now identified that our insurance expense using expense method is 22,500. Okay? So are we clear on that? And let's prove. Sa asset method, 22,500 ang insurance expense, while for expense method, 22,500 din. So see, no? Equal lang din sila for our ending balance. Okay? So ayan, no? So either of the two methods will be used, then that would be having the same balance, magkaiba lang sa adjusting entry. Okay, so I hope na nasundan po natin yung ating example number 1. Again, if you do have questions, please let me know. Okay, so that's for our example number 1 about prepaid insurance. Okay, so next, no, we have example number 2. By the way, if pagod na kayo, you want to take a break, no, you can pause this video lecture. Pero syempre akong nagre-record, daldal lang ako ng daldal. Okay, so just pause for a while if you want. Okay, don't forget then to chat down notes ha. Pag may questions, just please let me know. Okay, so now in example to naman, no, so I am going to discuss naman about rents, no. So on November 1, 2021, Taeyong Company paid rent in advance. So tayo ulit yung nagbayad. We are Taeyong Company. We paid rent in advance for 60,000 and it covers 6 months rent starting November 1. Okay, so kung November 1 yan, nag-start 2021, kailan kaya matatapos? So November, December, January, February, March, and then April. So hanggang April yung coverage nito, no? So this is part of prepaid expense nga kasi we have paid in advance. And then, however, the company year ends on December 31. Okay, so may cut-off tayo December 31, kailangan natin ng mag-adjusting entry since a portion of it will are not yet used or already used, no, depending upon the method. So same approach with example 1. Okay, so we need to record on the time that we have paid. Diba? So on November 1, 2021, using the usual transaction natin, if you use asset method, so for your advance payment, you debit prepaid rent 60,000 and credit cash 60,000. Again, we have debited an asset account which is prepaid rent, kaya it signifies asset method. While if it is expense method naman, we will be debiting rent expense, okay, an expense account debited under expense method, 60,000, and credit cash, 60,000. So see again the difference between the two methods upon payment is the account title used not to be debited under the asset method, prepaid rent, and then expense method, rent expense. So after 2 months, sir, bakit after 2 months? November and December, di ba? Nagamit na natin yung rent na binayaran natin. Okay, so if it is asset method, you will adjust for what? Nilagay mo siya lahat as asset. After 2 months nagamit mo na, so you will adjust on December 31, 2021 yung used portion natin. So ilang months ba yung nagamit natin? November and December. So yung 60,000 na binayaran natin times 2 months na nakalipas, which refers to November and December, over the 6 months total coverage ng advance payment natin ng rent. So ang nagamit na po natin or the used portion was 20,000. Okay? So ang entry natin is debit rent expense para sa nagamit na portion, 20,000, and binabawasan na po natin yung prepaid rent which is credit to prepaid rent, 20,000 because we have already used it. Okay? So if you use asset method and you want to know magkano yung balances at the end of the reporting period, yung prepaid rent natin, initially you have 60,000. And then after mo mag-adjust, no, nag-credit tayo ng prepaid rent na 20,000. So ang natitira na lang po is yung 40,000. At sir, para saan yung 40,000? Yan po ay para doon sa natitirang mga buwan ng January, February, March, and April. Kasi they are not yet used pa. Diba? Pang next year pa yon. Samantalang, para i-record naman kung magkano yung rent expense natin or yung nagamit natin during 2021, it is amounting to 20,000. Isa lang naman yung rent expense, itong naka-debit under the adjusting entry. Okay, so that's under asset method. Later, we will prove again if the ending balance of the prepaid rent and rent expense are similar to the expense method. Okay? Sige, so under the expense method naman po ngayon, no? Dito na tayo sa expense method, charge natin lahat as rent expense. But remember, as you know, no, in 2021, 2 buwan lang yung ating nagamit. So dapat we establish yung tinatawag naman na unused portion. So for the unused portion, no, ilang months pa yung hindi nagagamit? 4 months. That's the remaining January, February, March, April na renta natin. So ilang buwan yon? 4 months. So yung 60,000 natin multiplied by the 4 months na natitira or unused portion all over the total 6 months, our unused amount was 40,000. So pag inentryhan natin siya on December 31, 2021 for our adjusting entry, it will be debit prepaid rent 40,000. Naging asset siya kasi hindi pa po gamit. And then we credit, binawasan natin yung rent expense natin by 40,000. Okay? So now let's prove kung same po yung ating balance with regards to the asset and expense method. So sa expense method, as you can see, isa lang po yung prepaid rent, 40,000 lang. So your prepaid rent was 40,000 and it is also similar with your asset method. Okay? So equal. Okay? And then sa rent expense naman, initially you have 60,000 in the date of payment. Tapos nag-credit tayo ng unused portion ng 40,000. So ang natitira pong rent expense which relates to the used amount was 20,000. Okay, so 20,000 lang under expense method. And as you can see, the rent expense as well under your asset method is 20,000. Thus, we can say that the rent expense, whether asset or expense method was used, was the same, na 20,000. Okay? So that's our adjusting entries. Again ha, uulitin natin, if it is asset method, you need to adjust for the use portion. For expense method, you need to adjust for the unused portion. Bawal magkabaliktad yung adjusting natin kasi mamamali kayo. Okay, so that's our example number 2. I hope that you can still follow. Again, if you do have questions, please let me know. Okay? So yan po yung ating example number 2. I hope na na-remind kayo ng everything that we have discussed in the theory, no, via these problems. Okay? At mas naiintindihan ninyo. So ngayon naman, no, another example for payment in advance is for supplies naman. Okay? So ito muna tayo, no? So itong supplies kasi hindi siya nakadepende sa time. In the example 1 at saka 2 kanina, ano nga example 1 kanina, we have talked about the insurance. Example 2 is all about rents. Parehas po yun ay time-bound, di ba? So pag nag-expired siya after a month or ilang years man yung coverage niya, then tapos na. Ngayon dito naman sa ating example number 3, it is more on supplies. And as mentioned to you, this is not time-bound. Okay? Kasi nakadepende tayo sa supplies on the usage. Okay? Hindi naman pwedeng sabihin na, ay, tapos ng 1 year sa supplies na yan, expired na yan. Walang ganun, Mars, no? Okay? So, let's see kung paano i-account naman yung sa supplies. So, on November 25, 2021, Gene Company started its business and purchased 10,000 worth of supplies. Ayan, kakasimula pa lang ni Gene ng company niya. So, bumili siya ng 10,000 worth of supplies. So, let's record muna, no? On November 25, if you use asset method, again, you will be debiting asset upon payment. So, that will be debit supplies, 10,000, and credit cash, 10,000. So, supplies is an asset account. And then if you will use expense method, just like what we have in module number 3, di ba? Kaya parang hawig ito dun sa mga nangyari sa module 3 natin na sinabi kong module 4 ko i-discuss. So ito na po yun. So if expense method yung ating ginamit, okay, so you will be debiting supplies expense, 10,000, and credit cash, 10,000. So see again the difference between the two. Yung debited account under asset method is an asset, while in the expense, it's expense. Okay? So that's the entry for the date of payment. Now, on December 31, which is the company's year-end, no, the company conducted a physical count. So binilang nila, no, para malaman nila kung magkano po yung natitirang supplies. Sir, bakit kailangang alamin kung magkano yung natitirang supplies? Remember class, no, we have to adjust for either the use or unused portion. That's why we need to use or we need to count, no, kung ilan pa yung natitira. Actually class, if you have your records, no, kung ikaw ay maayos sa pagre-record ng supplies or may monitoring log ka kung ilan yung natanggal, ilan yung nagamit, no. So you need not to do the physical count. Pero if medyo yung system mo is not that accurate in recording kung ilan yung nagamit or what, then you need to count kung magkano pa po yung natitirang supplies natin. So yun yung ginawa ni Gin Company. Nagbilang siya. Okay, nag-conduct siya ng physical count para malaman kung magkano yung remaining supplies. And napag-alaman niya na ang natitira pa pala was 1,500. Okay? Ano bang mas madaling hanapin? Yung nawawala or yung natitira? Oh, hindi to love life ha. This is for supplies. Actually, mas madaling hanapin yung natitira. Di ba? Which is usually the case. Kasi yun yung mabibilang natin pag wala kang record. Pag may record ka, yun, mas madali naman makita kung ilan yung nagamit. Okay? So I hope nasusundan nyo ako, nagigets nyo yung point ko. So right now, under asset method, no, kung 1.5 na lang yung natitira, we need to adjust on December 31, no, yung use portion. Magkano yung nagamit? So the use portion will come from the 10,000 minus yung natitira na 1.5. So ang nagamit po, based on what we have seen in the physical count at saka on record was 8,500. Okay? So para i-record yung use portion under asset method, so we debit supplies expense, 8,500. Again, we have adjusted it for expense kasi nagamit na natin. And we credit, okay, credit supplies, 8,500. Okay? So after your adjusting entry, kung gusto niyo malaman yung balances, so for the supplies, as you can see, no, mayroon tayong 10,000 nung initial payment and then nabawasan natin ng 8,500. So yung supplies mo, which is also the same with the physical count, is 1,500. And then as to the supplies expense, yung dinebit natin for the adjusting entry, we have 8,500. So later, we will try to prove if this is the same using the expense method. Okay. So going now to the expense method, diba? Nilagay natin siya lahat as expense. Pero nagamit bang lahat? Actually, hindi. Kasi may natira na 1,500. So we will record the unused portion. And for the unused portion, you will be debiting supplies to 1,500 given na siya, no need for you to compute. So given na siya 1,500 and credit supplies expense 1,500. So hindi ako naglagay na ng computation class ha as description, but I just use words description. So to record and use supplies. Sir, bakit hindi ka na nag-compute? Hindi ba pwedeng 10,000 minus 8,500? Wag na. Bakit? Given na kasi yung 1,500. Okay, so wag mo nang interpolate, wag ka nang gawa-gawa ng solution, no? Given na kasi, okay? So now, let's see kung parehas ba sila after adjusting the expense method. Okay, in terms of supplies, as you can see, isa lang yung supplies account, yung in-adjust natin na unused portion, that's 1,500. And that is similar if you use the asset method. While with regards to the supplies expense, initially may 10,000 and then nung nag-adjust tayo under the unused portion, nag-credit tayo ng supplies expense. So ibig sabihin nun, 10,000 minus 1,500, ang supplies expense natin under expense method was 8,500. Parehas ba siya sa supplies expense under asset method? Yes. So they are again, no, after adjusting asset method or expense method will simply give us the same balances. Okay? So either of the two will be used. And again, depende yon sa ginagamit ng company. Okay? So any questions or clarifications, please let me know. So that is our example number 3 about supplies. Okay? Okay, so let's continue with our example number 4. So here is our problem. On October 31, 2021, the post-closing trial balance of Jimin Shop has 4,000 balance in its supplies account. Okay, so bale parang ito, no, unlike with example 3 na kakasimula pa lang ng business, ito pong example 4 is parang matagal na business, and then we have to have yung beginning balance. Actually, itong October 31, 2021, this is the big bal or the beginning balance for the month of November. Okay? So which is typically the case if rolling over na yung company, no? And on November 15, 2021, no, dahil malamang baka paubos na yung supplies na meron tayo, we have purchased 10,000 worth of supplies. So bumili tayo ng panibagong supplies. And on November 30 daw, they have conducted a physical count again to determine kung magkano pa po yung natitira. And they have counted that the remaining supplies was 4,500 pa. Okay? So again, using our asset method or expense method approach, let's discuss no, how do we adjust for the balances. Okay, so on November 15, 2021, at the time of purchase, so using the asset method, we will just debit supplies 10,000 and credit cash 10,000. So again, we have debited an asset account supplies. Then for the expense method, we have charged the purchase all in supplies expense. So debit supplies expense 10,000 and credit cash 10,000. Okay, so that's our initial entry upon purchase. Sir, wala po bang entry yung beginning balance? Remember, in Module 3, our beginning balance was immediately posted at the big bal natin sa general ledger. So hindi na siya i-entryhan in 2021 November since it was recorded already previously around October. Okay, so big bal na lang siya. Wala siyang journal entry. Now, after you have determined on November 30, no, you need to adjust yung ating balances. No? Kasi nalaman mo na ang natitira na lang pala sa supplies mo ay 4,500 na lang. Okay? So if you will be using the asset method, okay, so we will adjust para sa use portion. So paano natin malalaman yung use portion? That is yung 4,000 na beginning balance plus yung binili natin na 10,000 minus yung natira. So we have determined that our supplies expense, okay, which is yung used during the period, amounts to 9,500. So debit supplies expense for the use portion na 9,500 and credit supplies 9,500. Okay? So now, no, if you want to know the balances, so you have the supplies, 4,000 yung begbal natin, plus yung binili na 10,000 charged to supplies account and asset, less our less yung ating credit kanina in the adjusting entry na 9,500. Thus, our supplies remaining, which is also the same with our physical count, is 4,500. Okay? Pareha siya sa physical count, which is dapat yun yung case kasi yun po yung natitirang amount natin ng supplies. And then as to the supplies expense, as you can see, no, you have 9,500. Yun kasi yung dinebit natin to adjust for the used portion. Okay? So that's if we use the asset method. Let's prove kung magiging same pa rin ang balances if we use the expense method. Okay, so punta na tayo sa expense method. So sa expense method, we will adjust for the unused portion. So remember, ang unused natin was 4,500. But, ito yung tandaan mo. Sa supplies account mo, may unused ka na rin na 4,000. Di ba? Yan yung begbal mo. Ngayon, dapat lang siyang maging 4,500. So bali, ang adjustment na lang natin is yung itinaas na value. So ang i-adjust na lang natin is yung itinaas ng value from 4,000 na balance up to naging 4,500. So our adjustment for the unused portion was 4,500 minus 4,000. So 500 na lang po yung iaangat. So ang adjustment natin is debit supplies 500 and credit supplies expense 500. So ito yung pinagkaiba rin with example 3 kanina, no? So as you can see, dahil may beginning balance tayo, may naka-record na dun sa supplies account, para makuha natin yung ending balance na 4,500, i-adjust mo na lang siya dun sa kulang. Okay? Kaya 500 na lang po. Now, to prove sa inyo na parehas pa rin siya if even it's using asset method. So for the supplies natin, okay? Sa supplies, as you can see, 4,000 yung begbal natin, di ba? 4,000. Tapos, in the adjusting entry ng unused portion, nag-debit na lang tayo ng 500. So, additional 500 na lang yun sa supplies. Kaya our supplies is equal to 4,500, which is the same na po with our asset method. At the same time, same na rin siya doon sa ating remaining balance ng supplies. So kumbaga, ang tinignan kasi natin kung magkano nilang idadagdag natin sa dati pang naka-record. No? Unlike kanina sa example 3, yung kung magkano yung ending balance kasi wala naman po tayong beginning balance doon. Okay? Then as to our supplies expense, initially, may 10,000 po tayo na dinebit in November 15. Then in this November 30, we have credited 500, so minus 500. Thus, our supplies expense is 9,500, which is similar to our supplies expense under asset method. Okay, so ayan, parehas na po sila. So ayun no, yun yung lesson sa atin. If there is a beginning balance, please check no kung tumaas na lang. Sa expense method lang naman to, doon po yung challenging kasi titignan mo na lang kung tumaas na lang yung value or pwede ring bumaba no depending upon the situation. Pero again, I hope that you have followed the way how we adjust the value no. In-adjust natin siya based doon sa consideration ng not only yung binili natin or binayaran natin in advance, but also the balance as well coming from the previous period. Okay, so that's our example number 4. Again, if you do have questions, please let me know on our respective chat boxes. Okay, so we are now down to our last example. Okay, so example number 5. So dito hindi na natin gagawin yung dalawang method, pero aalamin lang natin kung anong method po yung appropriate based sa statement. Okay, so here's our last problem. So on October 1, 2021, J-Hope Company had a balance of prepaid rent amounting to 30,000. So parang ito yung begbal nung kasunod na buwan. And it relates to 5 months rent paid in advance. Now, prepare daw the adjusting entry on November 30, 2021 if the company reports monthly basis. Okay. So, hindi na natin gagawin parehas asset method at saka expense method. Ngayon, ano kayang mas appropriate method dito? Is it asset method or is it expense method? Okay. So, ang sagot natin is we will be using asset method. Why? Dahil ang binigay na balance ay prepaid rent. And prepaid rent is considered as an asset account. So ganun po class, no? Aside from kung ano yung initial entry or dinebit sa initial entry, di ba kanina, ang identifier natin, pag nakadebit yung asset sa date of payment, asset method. Pag ang nakadebit sa payment entry natin is expense, then we will use expense method. Ngayon, wala ka namang binayaran. Here in this October 31, that was already paid in the previous period. Maybe, ang binigay lang sa'yo is the balance in your trial balance or in the financial statement. Okay? So, dahil ang binigay po is itong asset account na prepaid rent, then we will appropriately use asset method. Sir, bakit asset method? Kasi nga, ang binigay na balance ay asset. So aside from the debit entry, ito yung tatandaan mo. Kung ano yung dinebit or kung ano yung binigay na balance, okay, that would be your method. Dahil ang binigay na balance is asset account, then we will be using the asset method. So kung asset method yan, anong adjusting entry natin? On November 30, your adjusting entry will be the used portion. Eh sir, paano kung ang binigay sa atin is expense account? Possible ba yon? Pwede rin kung expense account ang binigay sa inyo, edi use the expense method. Pero bihira po, no, or wala talagang chances na pag nagbigay ng begbal ay expense account. Why? Because in module number 5, it will be subjected kasi expense account are subjected to closing entries. Okay? So mapapag-aralan natin yan sa module 5. Antayin nyo lang po yun. Pero ayun, no, dahil ang binigay na balance dito ay asset, we use asset method, and in terms of adjustment, we will be using the use portion. So ano yung use portion niya? So dahil November lang naman yung tinutukoy, then that's only 1 month. So for the use portion, it will be 30,000 times 1 month na nagamit over the related 5 months of the rent. Okay? So that would be 6,000. So ang adjusting entry natin is debit rent expense 6,000 and we credit prepaid rent 6,000. So pag nangyari yon, ang prepaid rent na lang natin after November 30 was 24,000 at yung supplies expense natin was 6,000. Okay? So whatever is the balance given, that would be your method. I hope na sinusulat niyo na whatever is the balance given, that is also the method. Okay? I hope that that is clear, ha? And lastly, para sagutin ko yung tanong na pinending ko kanina, what if hindi sinabi yung method? Ano yung gagamitin? Okay? Kagaya nito, example number 5, if hindi man sabihin yung method pero may balance, then use the balance as indicator. Okay? Kagaya nito, asset yung binigay, kaya asset method tayo. Now, sir, paano kung walang sinabing asset account? Ano po yung usually ginagamit? So if the problem is silent, okay, at hindi sinabi whether asset method or expense method ang gagamitin, in the practice, the most commonly used method is your asset method. Okay, asset method. Pero again ha, tignan ninyo yung mga indicators na binanggit ko kanina in example, starting example 1 up to this example number 5. Kung meron naman indicators, then use them. Pero pag wala na talaga, then you can use the asset method. Okay? I hope that that is clear. So that's the end of my discussion about prepaid expenses. So we will deal more of it in our examples and on our synchronous discussions class. Okay, so again, if you do have questions, just please let me know on our respective chat boxes, or even you can comment in this video lecture. So I'll see you in our next discussion about the deferrals. Okay, tapos na tayo sa prepaid expense. Our last video lecture will be all about unearned revenues. So I'll see you there, no? Okay, again, if you do have questions, please let me know. So have a great day, stay safe. Kamsahamnida, kapon ka, sayonara, have a great day. God bless and stay safe, everyone.